Hello everybody, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to another session on grape varieties. This one is our advanced version. As you can see at the bottom here, this is our advanced version. So the advanced version means that this is really suitable for WSET Level 3 and above and equivalents in the world. So this is quite an in-depth look at the grape variety Garganega. So if you are looking for something a bit more simpler and you are studying for, say, your WSET Level 2, please look at our intermediate version, which is a 7-minute video covering the basics. But back to this one and back to Garganega and the advanced version. As mentioned, my name is Jimmy Smith. My personal social media handle for Instagram and Twitter is @winewithjimmy. So please get in touch for any comments or questions. At West London Wine and at South London Wine are my two wine schools here in London, the United Kingdom. West London in Fulham, South London in Streatham and in Greenwich. A huge amount of tastings and courses, both online and in the classroom. And then at Streatham Wine House, which is a really fun, brilliant wine bar in South London. Whenever you are in town, please come see us for a glass there or come and see us for a class at the schools. Great, so let's move on to Garganega. So here we go, Garganega's history first, and then we'll move into what it's like in the vineyard, what it's like in the winery. Then we'll go through its key locations and also then its style, the usual format. Garganega, first of all, was mentioned in the 13th century. So this is really around sort of the middle of 1200s, and this was where it was mentioned in a number of texts. Sorry, it's just loading up. Here we go. Yeah, and it was mentioned in a 13th century treatise of the Italian agronomist, and that's mentioned there, Pietro de Crescenzi. And it was mentioned that it was cultivated around Bologna and Padova, those kind of areas. And also, it's been quite famous before then. Northern Italian aristocracy and elites have been praising this wine, especially Soave, since the 6th century. And a statesman by the name of Cassiodorus, to the king to the king at the time, which is Theodoric the Great, described this wine as being pure and white, just like a lily. Okay, so it has this wonderful start of history behind it, a very well-prized style. In fact, going back before that, a wine called Recioto, which then, of course, nowadays is called Recioto de Soave, which is the sweet wine, was praised by the Romans and the likes of Pliny the Elder. So there is a lovely bit of history behind this. It was thought that this variety was brought over by the Greeks, which is often the very easy way to approach viticulture and ampelography in Italy, as the Greek civilization came into southern Italy and brought a lot of culture. But please remember that there were plenty of civilizations before the Greeks, and the Etruscans were one of those, mightily important. With DNA profiling recently, we have found that Garganega has no links to any grape variety that we know from Greece. There is no DNA trace there. So therefore, it really is firmly rooted in the northeast Italy, so specifically around Veneto. Its biggest diversity in terms of genetics is really found in that area. So therefore, we think it's from that zone. Interestingly, what threw up a very fascinating point is that it's genetically identical to Garganega Dorato, which is from Sicily. Very famous today around the western parts of Sicily, areas such as Trapani, Marsala, Palermo, and all those kind of areas. So a fair amount of it, you are looking at about a third, maybe just over that, of the production being found in Sicily of this grape variety. But being grown up in that area in a different climate, different soils, does produce a different style. Now, there are genetic similarities to Corvina Veronese, Ozzoletta, and Rondinella, and a few others as well. But these are all your Venetian. So this is why we say it's quite a firmly Venetian grape variety, because it has such genetic diversity within this area, linking it to these other varieties. It's also it was crossed wild with a grape called Uva Sorga or Sacra, which is not cultivated at any length anymore, but to produce Susameniglio, which is a variety which we find down in Puglia, often planted on sandy soils around where we find things like Negramaro. And it's a very interesting little style. So that is a parentage of Susameniglio, quite fascinatingly. And then it also has a parent or offspring relationship to a number of other varieties. Albanna, so a variety from Romagna sort of part. So that's kind of central eastern Italy. Catarato from Sicily. Malvasia Bianca de Candia, which is produced quite a bit over. Montanica Bianco and Trebbiano Toscano, amongst many others. So it actually has had such genetic importance in shaping a lot of the viticultural scene of Italy. So many links. So the variety is late ripening. So we find that it being picked quite late in September, October time means that we have the possibility, when it's left on the vine a bit longer, to produce quite a bit of complexity behind it, quite a bit of intensity as well. It is a vine, though, that is very vigorous. It will grow at will, and it is therefore very productive. You can have many bunches on a vine. So it really is important to really to craft quality and complexity. It is important to control the canopy and control the yields. So this will be through management of the amount of buds in comparison to the vine's vigor. So you could let it yield quite large, and then this will produce big, hefty production numbers, which makes mainly the simpler style of Soave, generic Soave. But on areas where the soil is a little less nutrient rich, certainly the volcanic parts of Soave Classico, and those kind of zones will end up producing less intensive volumes and more intensive styles. So they are keeping in check. But the wine grower, the grape grower, will need to be also quite prevalent in terms of yield management actually in the vineyard itself. It is naturally very high in acidity, so it holds on to its acidity quite long. Also, therefore, means it's very well suited to the appassimento process, that is the drying of the grapes, picking them off the vine, drying them afterwards in well aerated buildings, frutais, and on racks called areles or bamboo racks, or actually just hung up on little nails, so they can dry up. And that means, of course, you can produce more complex styles that can be dry, but often this is for the Recioto di Soave, the sweet expression of the area. Loose-knit bunches as well, which decreases any issues with mildews and fungal molds. And mentioned already this, some of the most expressive and complex styles will tend to be found on the steep slopes, the volcanic area of Soave Classico. That's right behind the lovely fortified town of Soave, where we find some brilliant wines like Pierrepan's Calvarino, for instance, which is a really lovely complex style that has that very distinctive volcanic edge to it, that bit of herbaceous note, which is quite common on volcanic soils. In the winery, Garganega can be found as a varietal, and often is, but you'll find it also blended and commonly blended with Trebbiano, for instance, in Soave. Also, little small amounts of Chardonnay are permitted as well. So it's quite a diverse variety. The large yields, as we mentioned on the last one, will be produced via reductive winemaking methods in stainless steel. And this will tend to make more neutral-based wines. These are the larger, inexpensive productions, bag-in-box, etc. Controlled yields would make much more complex styles, of course, and these will be wines that may go through maybe some oak. It won't be new, but maybe a bit of oxidative wine making, maybe some lees contact to give the weight and to really suit that kind of peachy sweet character in the wine, and maybe even some proportions of malolactic fermentation, MLF, to add that creamy characteristic as well. And some wines will go through this process. Recioto style, so that's Recioto di Soave, DOCG, will be crafted from those semi-dried grapes via the appassimento method, and making, of course, wonderfully sweet, rich, concentrated, well-aged wines with balancing high acids. So where do we find Garganega? We have about 15,500 hectares of it, of which around maybe around 4,500, 5,000 are actually found in Sicily. And I mentioned that that's many places. I mean, it's often found as, of course, Garganega Dorato, as Sicilia DOC, IGT Ter Siciliana, or in some of the DOCs in the west. So that's around Trapani, Marsala, and that kind of area. But the real fame, because of the power of the north, comes in these northern regions. And this map here, you've got a quite detailed map of Veneto, but this is Western Veneto. So you'll see that on the real western fringe of Veneto, we have here, which is Lake Garda. Okay, then in the northern part, we have the Monte Lessini, which is just here, and that comes down, and where it comes down to meet Verona, which is just here, as it comes down to meet Verona, these are lovely hills where we find places like Valpolicella, but next door to that, for us, very importantly, Soave. Okay, and Soave, the fortified medieval town, is gorgeous and about 45 minutes to the east of Verona. Really, really lovely place, really lovely. So the generic whole purple area there is Soave. The sub-district is Soave Classico, which is behind the medieval fortress on volcanic soils. Then we have Soave Superiore DOCG, and that is more high in quality, lesser yields, etc. Recioto di Soave DOCG as well. You can add DOCG on there. In fact, I will do that for you right now because it's missing. But the DOCG of Recioto di Soave, that's the sweet wine made via the appassimento method. And then numerous other ones. So right next door to Soave to the east, and it's just off this, well, it's on this map, and I'll identify it for you just here. Let's do it in red. Here we go. It's just here. And that is Gambalara. And that's a DOC, which produces similar styles. You've also got Costosa, which you'll find some in. You'll also find others which are going more towards the east. So here is Colli Baricci, Colli Uggiani as well, Bianco di Costosa. So these all produce Garganega. So its most famous, though, certainly are the ones we've got listed at the top here. Soave Classico, Soave Superiore, and the Recioto di Soave. Okay, some of the most complex would be Soave Classico, Soave Superiore for me personally. And what is it like in style? So the variety, Garganega, is a numerous in terms of its diversity. Remember, it can be produced in quite high yields via stainless steel production in the winemaking side of things. And that normally produces stuff which is kind of appley, lemony, and a little bit floral. Here we've got a little bit of chamomile, a little bit of jasmine, so light sort of white flowers to it. The more complex expressions will actually have more distinctive, richer fruit notes, so a bit of peach, a little bit of pear, on top of what a normal Soave would have. And then often a little hint of almond, and that develops quite a lot with a bit of age. and it can have a little bit of honey with age. There's a bit of it in the background there, and then potentially some oak, but that's really for oxidative notes to really push out these almondy characteristics in the wine. The wines will tend to be light to medium bodied. The very best will have more body behind them. The acidities are always high, and only really on the premium examples would you wish to age them and age them well. The inexpensive versions will be those that, of course, will be drunk generally quite young and fresh. So that really is our video on Garganega, really crafting the famous wines of Soave and all linked Soave wines. I hope you've enjoyed this class and I hope you've learned something. My name is Jimmy Smith. Please get in touch with @WineWithJimmy if you have any comments or questions on Instagram and on Twitter. At Western on Wine is our wine school in Fulham that does a huge amount of tastings both online and in person. South London as well. We do a lot of courses in Greenwich and Streatham. And then our wonderful wine bar, Streatham Wine House down in Streatham. Come and see us for a glass of wine when you are next, or a bottle maybe, when you're next in London. Thank you so much for your time and patience. Please leave any comments or questions below on the YouTube chat below this video. Thank you so much.